Affairs Manager for the South Bay area for the League of California Cities, Los Angeles County Division. And my job at the League of Cities is to understand the issues that cities here in the South Bay are facing, as well as to work to educate them on new policies and issues, initiatives, and which come up here in the region, and also to advocate to protect local control in Sacramento and DC. As part of that advocacy, I joined together with the South Bay Association of Chambers of Commerce and the South Bay COG to create this event 4 years ago, and it has only grown and advanced as we through the years. So I'm very happy to thank my co-hosts today, the South Bay Cities COG and the South Bay Association of Chambers, as we look to host today 6 elected officials from all sections of government. But first, as we get started, I wanted to welcome to the podium Mayor Pat Fury, the mayor of the city of Torrance.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think the first order of business is we'll do a flag salute. So I ask everybody to please stand and face the flag. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. On behalf of my colleagues on the Torrance City Council, I want to welcome you all to the city of Torrance. I want to thank Jeff and the League of California Cities, the Council of Government, and the South Bay Association of Chambers of Commerce for hosting this event again for the 4th time in our city. We appreciate the time and effort that all of the elected officials, the appointed officials, and those who are operating government agencies take out of their day to be here. But we really appreciate our elected officials from the federal government, the county government, and the state government for updating us on exactly what's happening in their area so that we will know what's happening in our area. So again, on behalf of my colleagues on the council, welcome to the city of Torrance, and let's enjoy the information we received today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Fury. So I wanted to also just acknowledge the help of the South Bay Association of Chambers, again, currently chaired by Charles Gale, who couldn't make it today. But then we also have with us the South Bay Cities Council of Governments Chair, Torrance Council Member Kurt Wiedemann. I believe he's in the audience. Actually, I haven't seen him yet. And then, of course, I want to acknowledge the Los Angeles County Division of the League's Vice President, Jennifer King, from the city of Palos Verdes Estates. And also, this event would not be possible without the assistance of the Metropolitan Water District, who has provided our breakfast this morning, along with the help of the Torrance Bakery. So, this morning, we have an opportunity to hear from and speak with 6 officials who represent the South Bay. We're going to have each speak for about 4 minutes about their priorities for the year. And after that, after they each have a turn, we're going to have time for some questions so that they can hear your concerns and so they can get a clearer picture of the issues that cities and businesses are facing here in the South Bay. There are pens and cards at each of your tables, so jot down your questions as you have them, and then at the end or as we go through, some volunteers will be going around to collect some of those, and we'll be getting to the questions after the end of the speakers. So before we get started, I want our speakers to get a sense of who is in the room today. And I know most of the audience is made up of city officials and chamber members, so I apologize in advance for the city officials for not being able to name all of you, but there are more than 30 of you here in the room, or at least RSVP'd. So I want to help by a show of hands as I call off each city to show who you are and that you're in the room for our speakers. I believe we have city officials here from Gardena today. Not quite yet this morning. Hermosa Beach, I know I've seen Hermosa Beach in the room. Yes. And there we are. City of Lawndale, City of Lomita, Manhattan Beach, Palos Verdes Estates, Rancho Palos Verdes, Rolling Hills Estates, and of course the city of Torrance. Always brings a crowd. Thank you. Is there anyone else I missed from any other city? Oh, Redondo Beach. Forgive me. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to follow the traditional rules of seniority, federal then state, state then assembly, and then on to the county. So don't forget about the cards on your tables, and let's get started. Our first guest today is Congresswoman Maxine Waters. Elected in 2016 to her 14th term in the U.S. House of Representatives, Congresswoman Waters represents the 43rd Congressional District, which includes pieces of Westchester, Playa del Rey, Watts, the Harbor Gateway, parts of Torrance, Gardena, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, and Lomita. The Congresswoman serves as ranking member of the Financial Services Committee and is a former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressmember Waters has always been known as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, children, minorities, and the poor. But with the election of Donald Trump, she has only seemed to become more energized in her job. Her remarks have a tendency to be a viral sensation, and she has gained the moniker of Auntie Maxine by her legions of social media followers. Please help me welcome Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Reclaiming my time. I'm delighted to be here this morning. I think this is a very important event. We've been holding town hall meetings throughout the district, and I consider whenever we have an opportunity to talk about what we're doing in our respective jobs and to talk about what we plan to do, that's the way the democracy is supposed to work. So I'm delighted to be here this morning. And let me just acknowledge League of California Cities Regional Public Affairs Manager, Jeff Kernan, Torrance Mayor, my dear friend, Pat Fury, Senator Ben Allen, Senator Stephen Bradford, Assemblymember Al Marsucci, Assemblymember Autumn Burke, and County Supervisor Janet Hahn. They're not all in the room, but they'll be here. So give them a big round of applause. I'd like to thank Jeffrey for that introduction. And thank you to the Los Angeles County Division of the League of California Cities, represented today by Vice Chair Jennifer King, the South Bay Association of Chambers of Commerce, and the South Bay Cities Council of Governments, represented by their chair, Kurt Weideman, and Executive Director Jackie Bacharach, for all inviting me here today. Now, I've been given 4 minutes, but you know I need more than 4 minutes to talk about what is happening in Washington, D.C., but I'm going to try and stay within the rules. First of all, I am on my way back to Washington because the State of the Union address is going to be given on Tuesday. And you've been hearing a lot of information about what's happening with that and who's going and who's not going, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important thing to focus on is the fact that we're operating under a continuing resolution, and that runs out February 8th. And we've got to go back again to see if we can resolve the differences between the parties and between the houses. As you know, the stalemate caused the government to shut down. And of course, that's very frightening for everybody. And while there were many who said that Schumer, who was negotiating on the Democratic side, caved in, and there are many who are saying that the government shutdown was caused by Trump, the fact of the matter is Washington is polarized. And it's very difficult to get together on this budget. We have gone through some very difficult times in the past year, some unusual times, some extraordinary times. And as you know, we have focused a lot on tax reform or tax scam, whichever you'd like to call it. The fact of the matter is, what we have is a tax reform bill that's created almost a $2 trillion deficit that's got to be made up by somebody somehow. And so we have this tax reform bill where corporations were given a huge tax break. from 31%, 35% to 21%. And while there are those who will describe tax breaks for the middle class, they're only temporary, they're not that much. The tax breaks for the corporations are permanent. And so we have some problems. Some of us have real problems with the so-called tax reform bill. California, New York, New Jersey, and some of the bigger states who have the kind of real estate where we have been able to deduct our mortgage interest and to deduct our state and local taxes. We can't do that way anymore. And this is all going to come due for 2018. And we can talk about that a little bit more in detail. But the tax reform bill is something that many of us are still not settled with. And of course, if we take back the House, and if we take back the White House, and if we take back the Senate, we're going to repeal all of that. So let me just move forward a little bit by saying this. The Senate has resolved to take off the table some of the negotiating points that Schumer was involved in with the White House. Now they're at a stalemate. The president says, I want $25 billion to build my wall. That's the wall that he promised Mexico was going to pay for. And now he wants the American taxpayer to pay for it. And Schumer has now said, and we're not going to give you $25 billion to build that wall. And as a matter of fact, we want DACA. Now, you know, DACA is a big issue. It's a big issue because the fight is about those young people who were brought here through no fault of their own. Many of them were just children, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And they have lived here, and when they talk about deportation, they have nowhere to go. They don't speak other language. They've gone to school here. And so this DACA issue emerges as very big. But it's not only the DACA issue. We're concerned about the veterans. I can't go into details about that, but something that's been done to them in the budget relating to disability. We're concerned about the healthcare clinics. We're concerned about a lot of other issues on the Democratic side. And I see these signs are up telling me my time is up, so I can stop reclaiming my time. Thank you very much.
And next, we're going to start with our state senate senators who are here in the room, and move on and welcome Senator Ben Allen to the stage. Senator Allen was elected in 2014 to represent the 26th Senate District, which I believe we are in. The beach cities, the Palos Verdes Peninsula, Lomita, Torrance, Santa Monica, and Beverly Hills. Senator Allen is the chair of the Education Committee and the Legislature's Joint Committee on the Arts. He also serves as a member of the state committees on elections and constitutional amendments, natural resources and water, transportation and housing, and he co-chairs the Environmental Caucus and is the vice chair of the Jewish Caucus. Since being elected, he has co-authored the Senate's climate change legislation, SB 350, and co-authored SB 277, the legislation which eliminates vaccination exemptions based on religious or personal beliefs to protect children against a number of infectious and dangerous diseases. Both were signed by the governor. Senator Allen also authored AB 541 to encourage school districts to partner with local cities to address stormwater pollution, which, because of the state and federal mandates imposed upon cities, is a tremendous financial burden on so many cities. The Los Angeles County Division of the League is thankful for the Senator's attention to this issue, and I want to welcome him to the podium now.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I got to start by saying, I suppose that, given the Congresswoman's comments, I'm wondering whether the state should take seniority here at this event over the federal government. I'm feeling very state-triotic these days as a Californian, and it's been a wild time to serve in government. I think all of us can agree. Everyone at the local level, right the way up to the federal level, just because of this really strange moment in American life. We've been working on a lot of different issues up in the state. Folks, if you haven't seen the governor's State of the State address, please do check it out. It was a robust, energetic, kind of final is his last speech after, I guess he's done 16 of these now. I said, we're never going to see one like him again, but he talked about all of his agenda, his priorities, all the things that he's working on. And it was a great speech, and it kind of give you a sense of where he's thinking. Let me speak a little bit about the tax bill that came down from the federal government and some of the things that we're trying to think creatively about at the state level. I'm part of a coalition of members of the legislature who are working with a team of law professors to try to see if there are ways that we can try to mitigate the impact of the tax bill on California taxpayers. It's not easy, but we are working in a couple of different areas to focus in on the question of charitable contributions and whether we can create a system that would allow people to make contributions to various aspects of government, whether it be directly to the general fund or the school system or environmental programs, and then get a significant rebate on their taxes associated with it. So we're trying to figure this out. The fact of the matter is that a number of red states have very popular rebate, credit, exemption programs for all sorts of different programs that involve direct contributions to government entities, programs that have vouchers for private schools, and they're very popular programs. And in some cases, there's literally a dollar-for-dollar exemption given that allows people to take a charitable contribution off of their federal taxes. And so we've got a team of law professors who are studying this very carefully. There's no question that the IRS would try to go after whatever we did with a lot of aggressiveness. But at the same time, if we can figure out a way that would make it very difficult for them to do so, given the popularity of these programs in a lot of other parts of the country, maybe we could buy some time and some protection for California taxpayers until we can restore some accountability to Washington. So this is one of several things that we're working on right now, but please be in touch with us. If there are other aspects of the tax bill that you think that we can address at the state level through changes in state tax law that won't blow a hole in the state budget. I understand that folks may say, well, just, if you get rid of all state taxes, then there won't be a problem. I get that. I think you'll see the governor's attitude in general has been he doesn't like new taxes, he doesn't like to cut taxes. His general attitude is that the state is only just emerging from the downturn, and he's really taken seriously his role as a fiscal steward. And so he's all about trying to make sure that the state budget is in a strong place to pass on to his successor. And so if you have ideas about ways that we can take action as a state to mitigate the impact of the tax bill on California taxpayers without blowing a hole in our state budget, please come to us. We're working on a number of different things right now, and it's actually kind of fun. It involves a lot of clever lawyering. One other thing that I'm working on right now is trying to look at the question of B Corps and trying to see if there are ways that we can create more incentives in the tax code for those companies that that pay their workers well and that you take care of them through benefits and create jobs in the community and engage in certain sustainable practices and trying to look at ways that we can create more incentives for this B Corp model that exists in the code, but there's really not a lot of incentive for people to take advantage of the B Corp. Folks who study corporations law know that in some respects we've created a jurisprudential model that basically says that corporations, in fact, it's potentially illegal for them to look out for anything but shareholder maximization, stock maximization. And if we can create new models within the code that allow companies and corporations to focus more on people and communities, we may do well by both those companies, those who want to do well, and also our communities. So that's another thing that we're spending some time looking at. I'm chair of the Education Committee. There's some fascinating issues we're working on right now, trying to see if we can take off the table some of the existing headaches that exist between our teachers union and our charter schools and the reform folks, trying to work on looking at charter authorizations, reform some changes to the way we finance special education so that we can have the money follow the student. We're also looking at ways that we can make some changes to the Government Code 1090 that's become a major sticking point between the charters and the union. So I'm really trying to it's the most powerful chairmanship that nobody wants in Sacramento because it's such a contentious area of battle. But I'm really trying to find some areas for us to find some common ground and reduce the animosity that exists between both sides and try to get people focused on helping the system work better for our kids. which really ought to be what the focus should be. So with that, my time is up, but I'll be here and looking forward to hanging out with people and answering whatever further questions people may have. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Next to the podium, another state senator, Senator Stephen Bradford, was first elected to the state Senate in November of 2016. Senator Stephen Bradford represents the 35th Senate District, which includes communities of Carson, Compton, Gardena, Harbor Gateway, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, Rancho Dominguez, San Pedro, Torrance, Watts, Willowbrook, and Wilmington. Senator Bradford is a South Bay native and began his elected public service career on the Gardena City Council, where he served for 12 years before moving up to the Assembly and is now in the Senate. During his time in the state legislature, Senator Bradford has worked tirelessly to correct many of the institutional injustices that plague Black, Latino, young Asian Pacific Islander males, and currently serves as the chair of the Senate Labor Committee. He is also a proud founder and chair of the Gardena Jazz Festival. Please welcome Senator Bradford to the podium.
Good morning. It's truly an honor to be here and welcome you to the 35th Senate District. Ben Allen's across the street, so we're in the 35th here. So it's truly an honor to be here, as stated, first to our host, Mayor Fury, for welcoming us to the City of Torrance, to the South Bay COG, and to the League of Cities. I'm no stranger to many of you. As you stated, I started my career in Gardena on local government, and boy, do I miss local government. Because we found a way, regardless of party, regardless of whatever the interests are, we found a way to get things done. And for some reason, when you get elected to the state or federal level, all of a sudden, your issues become partisan. And I don't understand that, because I served on Gardena City Council, where I was the only Democrat at one point, and we got things done. But we have to do the same thing in Sacramento, and we have to do the same thing in Washington, D.C. So I'm here to say that I stand here as a pragmatic individual who finds a way to get things done, regardless of what your party affiliation is. I'm not afraid to say some of my best friends in the legislature are Republicans. And some of my toughest legislation that was able to get to the governor, both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jerry Brown, has been through Republican support. So I'm here to speak, again, on issues that impact us all, regardless of, our economic background, our religious background, our party affiliation, and that's where we need. And I really want to take my hat off, because the challenge right now, governing in California is easy compared to what Congresswoman Waters is dealing with right now. So I want to take my hat off and just commend her, because the fight is real. And our challenge in Sacramento right now is not serving you right now. It's defending the madness in Washington, D.C., and it is having a direct impact on what we're able to do on a daily basis in Sacramento. We spent a great deal of our time last year putting up resolutions, countering everything that was happening in Washington, D.C. We spent our first week back, we spent introducing resolutions to combat the offshore drilling that the president now wants to do. We have to respond to that. And it's often said, so goes California, so goes the nation. So we have been leading, and we're proud of the work that we've done. As Senator Allen stated, Jerry Brown gave his final statement. We hope, well, we don't hope. I wish he could come back again. 8 years ago when he ran, I said, we've seen this act before, and do we need to see it again? Jerry Brown was the right governor at the right time in California. When he was elected 8 years ago, we had a $25 billion deficit. Today we have a $15 billion reserve. That's leadership. And last year, as I went around to all my cities, I gave a legislative update during our break from September to December, and I was proud of the work that we did. We passed SB 1, the gas tax, and whether you like it or not, it's needed in California. We need that infrastructure to be improved in California. It's going to create billions of dollars of jobs here in California. And what I was most proud of is the language that we put into leadership of the Legislative Black Caucus, supplier diversity, making sure that women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, disabled veteran-owned businesses have a piece of this pie. The governor was so much committed to this issue that he came down to the district back in June to Cal State Dominguez Hills. He met with over 200 minority-owned businesses and made a strong commitment. And we're going to see the results of that. And we're going to make sure that people go to work. It's not enough to continue to pass taxes and make promises that it's going to lead to jobs, it's going to lead to economic growth, and we never see any of that in our community. So we made a strong commitment to that. We're going to continue on with that as well. We also passed a park bond that every city in the state of California will benefit from, and it will be competitive grants that will be made available also to improve your parks and recreation system. I just want to talk about something that I know a little bit about, and that's energy. And I've served as chair of the Utilities and Commerce in the Assembly, and I serve on the committee now. But resource adequacy and making sure we have a reliable grid is something that we're not looking at as a whole because we're more concerned with technology right now, and we all want clean and renewable energy, but we also have to look at grid stability. And that's something that I want local governments to really take a good look at, because that is a great concern. It's a great concern, especially in light of the fires that we experienced here in California over the last couple of months. Southern California Edison, PG&E, and San Diego Gas and Electric, if they're found liable, it's very likely that some of these companies might file bankruptcy. And if they go away, we have a real problem. Cities are not prepared to provide electrical services. I'm just going to say that. Many cities have enough time running your parks and recreation, so I know you don't want to take that burden on. So I look forward to having additional discussions regarding that, and look forward to working with each and every one of you and the chamber as well. So thank you for this opportunity.
I just want to remind everyone about the question cards on the table. Someone will be coming around later in the program to sort of pick some of those up, but make sure to jot down some of those questions as we go. Oh, thank you. Now I want to welcome next to the podium Assembly Member Autumn Burke. She represents the 62nd Assembly District, which includes Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lawndale, El Segundo, Gardena, as well as communities including Westchester, Playa del Rey, Playa Vista, Venice, and Marina del Rey. The Assembly member is the chair of the Assembly Select Committee on Career Technical Education and Building a 21st Century Workforce, and of Assembly Revenue and Taxation. She's also a member of the Assembly Committees on Accountability and Administrative Review, Banking and Finance, Health, Utilities, and Energy, and on the Joint Legislative Committee on Climate Change Policies. She is also a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, the Legislative Environmental Caucus, and the Legislative Women's Caucus. The Assembly member has made expanding healthcare access and economic opportunity a centerpiece of her legislative career, but has also taken a leadership role in protecting our environment and combating climate change. Please welcome Assemblywoman Autumn Burke.
Good morning. Morning. You guys can do a little better than that. I know we're talking heads at you this morning, but good morning. Good morning. It's really, really good to be home. First of all, it's like 40 degrees in Sacramento. Let me start there. But also, I've been dragging my daughter around the state of California, and my colleagues are so sweet about it. My daughter sprayed milk on Senator Bradford's shoes yesterday at the airport on the way home. I owe him a shoe shine. But anyway, last year, my colleagues and I, along with the support of so many of you here in the room, worked tirelessly on passing landmark legislation on combating climate change, funding our transportation infrastructure, and taking steps towards solving our housing crisis, and strengthening our middle class, which should be one of our priorities here in the state of California. And we are not slowing down this year. I'm going to work even harder on my legislation priorities on workforce development, access to health care, supporting small business, consumer protection, advancing California's leadership on combating climate change, and continue our joint efforts towards ending child poverty. This year, I have a new assignment, which I don't think was on his list. I, in the last 3 weeks, became chair of Rev and Tax, which Senator Ben Allen obviously reviewed extensively what their side of the House is doing from our side, I'm excited. Because last year I had the great opportunity to work on a lot of the climate change issues, and for those we needed 54 votes. And for whatever we're going to do as far as taxation is considered, we're going to need 54 votes. And so it becomes incredibly important that whatever we do, we are able to reach across the aisle. It's one of the luxuries we have that our Congresswoman doesn't so much have where she is. So we're gonna let her do what she does best, which is protect us from the federal level. And then for us in the state, I think what's really gonna be important is that we reach our arms around the state of California, we take good care of you, we make sure you're protected, and that small business is protected. So, I do not have an answer as to what we're gonna do yet on our side because it's only been 3 weeks. And because I'm not gonna just throw some legislation up against the wall for publicity to see what sticks. We are flying people in, just like the Senate has. We are flying professors in, lawyers in, and we are going to give you a solution that will work, that will be effective, and that over time will be a solution not just for the wealthy, but for all of us, and especially small business. So, in addition to that, I will introduce legislation that will provide a tax credit of 5% to accredited investors investing in small business with small businesses with 2 million or less in gross receipts. California small business comprises 99.2% of California's business and provides employment for half of California's workforce. However, small business still say that their access to capital is the #1 issue when they want to expand. By providing a credit to small business investors, we can encourage more private investments and ensure that California small business continues to grow. And as a small business owner or a past small business owner, I know how important that is to you. So yes, we're gonna help small business, but I also want to help every single person that wants a good paying job to be able to get one. And with so many successful businesses in this community, we can make that happen. I hope to partner with you, and as I conduct my legislative field hearings, which is what we do in the Career Technical Education 21st Century Workforce Hearing Program. We go across the state, and what's really important to me is a lot of people don't realize that 70% of students that enter into high school never see a community college or a four-year university. Making sure that those young people have opportunity, that have hope, and we can only do that if we work with you. We cannot do that alone. So making sure that they get the training and that we have the finances in place. The first year I was here, we did $900 million for career technical education. We do not have a sustainable funding source for that at this time in the state of California, and making sure that we address that is going to be a priority for me again this year. Yesterday, Governor Brown, as we've heard, set a goal of protecting our environment and strengthening our economy by calling for 5 million zero-emission vehicles to be on California's roads by 2030. I will join with my colleagues in making the governor's goals a reality by introducing legislation that will set a procurement target of 30% near zero emission vehicles for new purchases to the state's medium and heavy duty vehicle fleet beginning in 2020. In the state, somehow we have this process where we ask private industry to do something, but then we don't require ourselves to do it. And at this point, I think that's ridiculous. I think if we're going to ask you to do it, we need to meet the same standards. And whether that is pay equity and whether that is zero emission vehicles, I think that those standards should be across the board. So we will go ahead and submit that next week, hopefully put it across the desk. As the governor also stated yesterday, California is built on dreams and preservation in the spirit, and I want to provide you with an update on our work on ending child poverty. Last year, I authored AB 1520, which was signed into law by the governor, which created a task force to provide benchmarks and recommendations to the governor and the legislature on how to eliminate deep child poverty and reduce child poverty by 50% over the next 20 years. Right now, we have 2 million California children living in poverty, which as a mother is unacceptable, but as a Californian, I'm sure every single one of you would never want to see any one of your children. That means for every one in 4 of you, your child would be living in poverty here in the state of California. So we cannot continue to allow that to be acceptable. So with the great support of the governor's office and Conway Collins of Grace, we've put together the best minds in philanthropy, business, research, government, and we meet once a month. There's about 30 of us that meet once a month, and we are discussing how to eliminate deep child poverty here in the state of California. And we will provide a recommendation at the end of this year on how our budget, we will from now on have a cover sheet to our budget. How does our budget reflect our true goals on reducing child poverty? And we will hold ourselves accountable. We will hold ourselves accountable for how we spend your money and how that we move forward on eliminating child poverty. So we are to eliminate 1 million children out of poverty over the next 20 years, according to the legislation we passed last year. So, with that, with our task force meetings, with our career technical education meetings, I am hoping that over the next year, this will be an interactive year for us, or at least from my office. We are hoping to work with all of you. We cannot do it alone. That's why we fly professors in. As much as we love the idea that we have all the answers, we don't. But what we do is we do have access. And so I think it's incumbent on us to use the access we have to those that are maybe a little smarter than us, studied a few different things than we did, and expand on that knowledge. And I will ask that of you as well. So as we move through the year, I hope it is a year that we all get a chance to work together, that I can use your minds, you can use mine, and so often you all come to me and say, we're a resource. This year, I think it's very, very important that I'm a resource to you. That when you need something, you can come to our office, and whether that is our local office here in Inglewood, or whether that's up in the state, we need you. We need your support, we need to work with you, and I look forward to doing that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Assemblymember Burke. Now, I want to bring up to the podium Assemblymember Al Maritsucci, who represents California's 66th Assembly District, which includes the Palos Verdes Peninsula cities, as well as Torrance, Gardena, Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, and Lomita. The Assemblymember chairs the Assembly Select Committee on Aerospace and has authored laws to help aerospace leaders like SpaceX and Northrop Grumman grow and create jobs. As a former chair of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Education and Finance, Maritsucci helped restore over $10 billion in funding for our schools, community colleges, and universities. SoCal Rock, the Southern California Regional Occupational Center, honored him in 2013 for his outstanding support for career technical education. A champion for the environment, Assemblymember Maritsucci has also authored numerous bills to help make the Torrance refinery and other oil refineries safer, and has introduced new legislation this year in response to the Trump administration's announcement that offshore oil drilling could once again resume off the California coast. Assembly Bill 1775 would prevent any new leases within the 3 nautical mile area from the coastline, which is controlled by the California State Lands Commission. This goes hand in hand with his efforts this year to make surfing the official sport of California. Please welcome Assemblymember Maritsucci.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's so good to see familiar faces from throughout the South Bay. I want to welcome everyone to Torrance. As a South Bay resident for over 20 years, as a former local elected official from the city of Torrance, I want to welcome everyone in particular, along with Mayor Fury and the First Lady, for hosting this in Torrance. I know that I believe this is organized by the California League of Cities, seeing Jeff here, and so I want to highlight that I had a 100% voting score with the California League of Cities, and that is proof that I believe in local control. I believe in supporting all of our local officials and making sure that we are supporting you in Sacramento to protect the quality of life in your neighborhoods and to do your job. I'm also proud to have a 100% voting score from the California Police Chiefs Association, and so as a former local elected and as a former prosecutor, I'm proud to support the priorities of local control and safe neighborhoods. So I'm going to talk about some of the priorities that I'm going to be working on. Of course, a continuation, a lot of work that I did last year, but one of the things that I've been talking a lot with Mayor Fury is something that we're very excited about, also Mayor Brand from Redondo Beach. Thanks, is that for me? It's the extension of the Metro Green Line. And of course, Supervisor Hahn, I know Mayor Pullen Miles is also playing an important role in this, but the South Bay is an isolated island when it comes to public transportation, especially when it comes to the Metro. And I think we can make tremendous progress in cutting down on the traffic on our roads, on the 405, by extending the Green Line. I'm proud to announce, I've been talking about this for a while, but I'm working with the governor and with Mayor Garcetti to fast track the Metro Green Line extension to the Torrance Transit Center. I'm looking forward to that groundbreaking in spring when we do the groundbreaking in Torrance. But the extension, the Green Line extension to Torrance, is part of the 28 by 28 project list. 28 projects that are to be fast-tracked. To have that completed, the goal is to have that completed by the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. So I'm very excited about that effort, and I'm going to be championing that effort. Second, I want to join everyone in thanking Congressman Waters for leading the fight, to fight for our values, fight back, fight for California values. And I believe that here in California, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, we all love our beaches and our coastline, and most of us, I hope all of us oppose offshore oil drilling in the state of California. So to that end, as Jeff indicated, I'm working with State Senator Hannibal Jackson from Santa Barbara to try to cut off any new offshore oil drilling, to fight back against the Trump administration's proposal to reopen offshore oil drilling in order to protect our beautiful beaches and coastline. We don't want to see platforms ruining the views in Palos Verdes or any of the beach cities. I think, again, just as we saw in Hermosa Beach. Where's Hermosa Beach? Anyone here? No, there we go. Mary. Over 80% of people in Hermosa Beach opposed oil drilling in their community. And we know that when you're looking at numbers like over 80% of people opposing oil drilling, that is a bipartisan consensus that we do not want any new oil drilling to ruin our property values, to ruin our views, and to ruin our quality of life. Third, I am working hard to support our local businesses, in particular as the chairman of the Assembly Select Committee on the aerospace industry. I'm continuing to be championing the aerospace industry. I believe that the South Bay was built on the back of the aerospace industry, and we need to continue the great job-creating industries that we have here in the South Bay. I've introduced a bill, and I'm going to be working on Senator Allen and I have been working on this for a couple of years now, but to create a California Aerospace Commission. I've heard from many industry stakeholders that we need a united voice in the state of California to advocate for the aerospace industry, to bring together all the stakeholders so that we're addressing all the issues and champion this industry where California continues to be a national and global leader. Companies like SpaceX and Northrop Grumman and Boeing and so many located right here in the South Bay. We want to make sure that we continue to support that. Last but not least, I see my time is expiring, but school funding. I know that is a top priority, and as a former Torrance School Board member, I will continue to fight for more school funding, to increase the base grant for those who are steeped in education funding, Wonk Talk. I'm also proud to have delivered $10 million in additional funding for SCROC last year to make sure we continue that wonderful program. Look forward to working with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Now I want to welcome to the podium County Supervisor Janice Hahn. Supervisor Hahn is a lifelong resident of Los Angeles and was elected to the County Board of Supervisors in 2016 to represent the 4th District. This district, you may not know, includes about 2 million residents and stretches from Long Beach through the Palos Verdes Peninsula and the beach cities, up through Marina del Rey, and east through the gateway cities, all the way to Diamond Bar. Prior to being elected supervisor, she served 10 years on the LA City Council and 5.5 years in Congress. While her time on the Board of Supervisors has been relatively brief, she has already been well engaged on the Metro Board, has been fighting for those communities plagued by pollution and health problems, and has been working on the homelessness crisis, which I know is of special interest to cities and chamber officials here today. Please welcome County Supervisor Janice Hahn.
very much. It's great to be here this morning, and thank you to the California League of Cities, our South Bay COGS, our South Bay Chambers of Commerce, who all helped to put this legislative update event together. I think it's really important, and I love sitting there as an audience member, listening to the other elected officials, and I came away with a feeling of the South Bay is incredibly fortunate to have the representation that we have both in Congress and at the state level. It's really important, and I really am happy to be here with all the local elected officials who are here. All of you are our colleagues. Thank you every day for what you do. But just listening to Auntie Maxine, I'm happy that she still has that kind of energy. I'm happy that she is not plagued by that weekly 3,000-mile commute to DC to fight on our behalf, and I appreciate that. I was with my former colleague and your colleague, Lucille Roybal Allard, the other night as we were in Downey during the homeless count, and she said, you know, we miss you, and I shot back before I really thought about it. I don't miss you. And I'll to rephrase that now, as I do miss my colleagues personally, but I do not miss what's going on in Washington, D.C., and I'm happy to be home in local government where we can really solve problems. I just wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to the commissioners, the county commissioners who are my commissioners here in the audience. We have Tom Lasser, who's my commissioner for military affairs. Terry Fury is my commissioner on beaches and harbors, as we were talking about how important the beaches are. Jackie Baccarat is my commissioner on the Quality and Productivity Commission for the county. Jonathan Butler is also on my Beaches and Harbors Commission. Now, thank you. Velvet Smith used to be on our commission that deals with the South Bay Botanic Gardens and the Arboretum. Unfortunately, we just did away with that commission. Sorry about that. If you want to keep serving, we'll find another good commission for you. And I want to thank Pat Wilson, who also used to be on my Beaches and Harbors commission, but found some of his other commitments, like to the Boys and Girls Club, seem to conflict with the meeting time. So it makes me realize that all of you in this room do a lot of stuff. And the County of Los Angeles really, we look to our commissions. That's kind of county government loves our citizen commissions, and they're the ones that report back to the supervisors and help us make good policy decisions. And just in case you think commissioners are not that important, just listening to y'all talking about our governor giving his last State of the State, guess where Jerry Brown started? When his father was governor, Edmund Brown, he actually called my dad, who was at the time a county supervisor, and said, I need you to appoint Jerry to a commission. I think he was 22 years old, and my dad appointed him to the Children and Family Commission for the County of Los Angeles. So see where you all end up. I know my time is going fast. Let me just tell you, one of the priorities in the County of Los Angeles is how current state law does not allow our paramedics to transport people to our new sobering centers and our urgent mental care centers. 30% of the homeless population has mental health challenges. A lot of these people, when someone calls and says, we have a homeless person, looks like they've got a mental health challenge, currently, the only place our paramedics can take them to is our emergency rooms because of state law. Now, a lot of these people don't have medical emergencies. They have a mental health crisis, or they need to go to a sobering center. So we have these mental health urgent cares, which are these calming places, which is really where we can de-escalate what's going on in someone's life and help them. I don't know if they need to get back on their meds or whatever. So Mike Gibson is carrying, Assemblymember Mike Gibson is carrying a bill, AB 1795, that the County of Los Angeles sponsored. And this would change state law, which I'm so glad all you state legislators are listening to me, because I'm going to need your support. This would would change state law to allow our paramedics to transport people to urgent mental health urgent care centers, which I think makes more sense. With all the overcrowding in our ERs, I don't know if you've been seeing the flu epidemic. We have hospitals that are putting up tents in their parking lot to deal with the emergency room influx of people who have the flu. We don't need our folks who have mental health challenges. We don't need them being dropped off at ERs. I don't think that helps anyone. 1 minute left. Homeless crisis, big issue for LA County. Last year, our count produced 58,000 people in LA County who are living on our streets. We're just involved in the homeless count. Many of you maybe volunteered the other night and did some homeless counting. I'm afraid that number might go up this year. But as you know, Los Angeles County voters passed Measure H last March. We're going to raise about $350 million a year to address this problem. I'm working with all of my cities. I'm working with the COG. One of the things I'm doing is making sure a lot of that money gets to the COG. I've made sure that our South Bay COG has had about $406,000 appropriated to them so they can work on homeless programs. Again, it's all about how we do things locally, and we're already housing people. We need more affordable housing to be built, and I'm going to stand here and say, any of you elected officials, any of you leaders in this room that are going to propose any kind of affordable housing, you have got my 100% support. I will try to make sure we appropriate resources and funds for that. We will never solve this problem unless all of us take this burden on equally. Not one city is going to house 58,000 people, but I want us all to take a piece of that, and we will work with you, and we will support you, and we need some leaders in this area to really solve this problem. So, thank you.
All right, well, we've come to the question and answer portion of the event. So please, if you do have, we have more, if you have questions at your table, we've got a couple people coming around to pick those up. I've got 2 microphones I'm going to use to kind of dole out to some of the elected officials here so we can get as much of a well-informed answer from all levels of our government. And I wanted to see, okay, we have lots of questions. I wanted to see about, if we could start with one question from the audience. Someone looking for a little bit more information on the South Bay aerospace defense industry and relationships to the Los Angeles Air Force Base. I know the South Bay Association of Chambers has been working on that for a number of years. It kind of started with the BRAC process, so I wanted to see if any of our elected officials wanted to hit that, and I bet Assemblymember Meritucci does.
All right, well, I want to give a special shout out to Michael Jackson here, who's been leading the effort with the, the efforts with the Alliance to support and defend our Los Angeles Air Force Base. As I think everyone knows in the South Bay, the LA Air Force Base is such a, let's give Michael a round of applause. And, I see Joanne from Northrop Grumman. I mean, a lot of folks, especially our local chambers, have been championing this effort. I mean, the LA Air Force Base, and of course, our supervisor has been a champion of this also. But our LA Air Force Base has been, a critical part of our local aerospace industry. We need to make sure that the LA Air Force Base is not part of any future BRAC process. Congresswoman, again, we asked for you to lead the fight in Washington. It's all the R&D development that takes place at the LA Air Force Base, especially with that symbiotic relationship they have with the Aerospace Corporation, that bridge that connects the Air Force Base with the Aerospace Corporation. That is the reason why, even though it may be more expensive to do business in California, we have the best minds, the most innovative engineers and rocket scientists right here in the South Bay, and that's why we have our a robust aerospace industry here in the South Bay. It's because of institutions like the LA Air Force Base. We need to make sure to keep it. Thank you very much.
I know Senator Torrance also wanted to
Just super quickly, this alliance has been formed, and we're working really closely together with a lot of the elected officials. If you want to get involved, please help us. We're trying to just get ready so that if anything happens in the future that may be a concern, we're ready to respond very quickly. One thing that we're going to be doing up in El Segundo, the Select Committee on Defense and Aerospace on the Senate side, it will be holding a joint hearing with the Senate Education Committee to look at STEM pathways. One of the big challenges that I know we have for a lot of our aerospace folks is recruitment. We've got so many great kids coming up the pike, but a lot of our best and brightest on the science side they want to go work in the private sector for the Googles and the and that whole world. But there's some incredible jobs in national security. We can't import people to work in those jobs because there's a lot of national security clearance issues associated, but part of that involves having really strong science pathways that are focused on aerospace, focused on those kinds of careers. We're going to be having a great discussion about it February 9th at El Segundo at the Da Vinci Schools, and would love your participation and help with that.
Well, hold on to that mic if you would, because I know, Senator, you're on the Housing Committee, and the next question has to do with housing. Specifically, I assume from a couple of our council members here, what are you going to do to oppose any further state restrictions on local land use authority? Specifically, two of the different cards here have called out SB 827, the Wiener bill, that would greatly expand transit-oriented housing along the entire route of those transit routes.
Yeah, so I think that question and also the comments that were made by the supervisor really do sum up the incredible challenge that we have right now. Senator Scott Wiener, who's a friend of mine from San Francisco, very aggressive on housing issues, and he helped to push through a number of the measures in the housing package, which I think were good measures last year. I think he's gone one step a little too far with SB 827 in the sense that it does run a roughshod over local control in ways that I just don't feel comfortable with. But I will say this issue is not going away. The one message I send to everyone on the city side is that we've got an enormous problem on our hands as a region and as a state in terms of housing affordability. We've got one of the worst housing affordability ratios in the country. If you look at our salaries and our housing costs, it's starting to impede our long-term economic growth and trajectory in our region. It's also exacerbating our traffic problem in ways that folks don't always think about. Because people can't afford to live near where they work, they're having to live further and further out, which means they're clogging our roads all the more and making it impossible for any of us to get around. So we've got to come up with solutions together to figure out ways to get more housing online, but do it in a way that is in accord with the lifestyle and the needs of our communities. Now that's a tough needle to thread, because a lot of folks just don't want to have any new housing under any circumstances, and so that's not going to fly. But in addition, I think we're hearing loud and clear, and we all know as residents, people who love California, love our way of life, that we don't want to make it so that there's a required minimum 40-foot, height minimum 40 feet on anything that's built next to a transit station. The last thing I want to do, by the way, and I'm absolutely with Al on trying to promote transit, the last thing I want to do is provide any incentive for people not to want to have transit in their neighborhoods. That's exactly the wrong message to send. I had a whole conversation with Denny Zane about this. He's had to move LA. He's been taking on a really important leadership role trying to get more transit online. So we've got to come up with some solutions together to address the housing crisis, but do so in a way that respects local control. That's going to involve compromise on both sides, and I ask you to grapple with this issue, think about it, help us come up with some solutions. Just saying no to new housing is not going to work. So let's work together to respect your role, your incredibly vital role in this process, while also helping to address our affordability crisis.
Thank you, Senator. Any of the other officials want to comment on housing? Please.
Let me just say that as the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, we have HUD in my jurisdiction. And as you know, when Barney Frank was the chair of that committee, we came up with the National Housing Trust Fund. And that National Housing Trust Fund was all about providing the resources to support cities and states in the production of low-income housing. And now that has been basically torpedoed by this administration. And I think we are seeing a desperation on the parts of some cities about this homelessness. I'm very proud of the city of Los Angeles and the county in what they have been able to do to raise the resources. Now they need access to land and the ability to use this money to create housing units, and they have support services that go along with it. That's extremely important. And I just want to mention to you something that has caused me to have to think twice about eminent domain. I have basically been aligned with my colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle about eminent domain for all of the time that I've been in the Congress of the United States. I have not been supportive of eminent domain. We have an issue where LA County in the 2nd Supervisorial District just decided it was going to take a huge property at Manchester and Vermont by eminent domain with the cooperation of the city and the county. Now, I have to think twice about that because while I have not been supportive of eminent domain, we're so desperate for housing and to be able to use the resources that have been generated until I'm going to think again about it. So what we did not have in that taking was the kind of community outreach and explanation of how that development was going to take place. So I'm going to put together a big town hall meeting so that we can have our residents weigh in on the project. But the fact that the county and the city came together on eminent domain for this property shows you the desperation that we have about homelessness. So between eminent domain and gentrification, you take a look at what's happening as we get economic development, and we're proud of that in the city of Inglewood and what's going on. It creates additional problems, and it's all about housing. You local elected officials, you have land use planning as your responsibility. I'm going to join with our supervisor in saying leadership. Leadership is needed to help us to get to the point where we can produce this housing, and we've got money now for supportive services, which is so good. So we've all got to be involved in this. Thank you.
Thank you again. Now, as these things sometimes happen, Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas just happened to be next door at another event, so I want to welcome him to the podium to please say a few words if you'd like.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, to fellow colleagues in public office, ladies and gentlemen, with the South Bay Association of Chamber of Commerce. And I was just here doing another presentation with those who are focused on adolescent well-being, and gave the young people a lesson in prehistoric phenomena in terms of my own adolescence, and did the best I could to remember what was going on then, and tried to assure them that they would make it through. But they will make it through with the loving and affirmative support of those who are adults. Marion Wright Edelman makes it abundantly clear at the Children's Defense Fund, we don't have a children's problem, we have an adult problem. And if the adults can kind of get it together, they'll do better. And so I simply want to say that I was here minding my own business, and was told that I needed to say a few words. Economic development is fundamentally important to the quality of life of our respective communities. Shout out to my colleague on the board where we collaborate on these issues, and those in the state legislature, Congress, and those who are in local government. Seems to me the drivers have to be economic development in the context of economic justice. Jackie, that's what we work on at Metro through the CDC. Reference was made to the work at a property after the civil unrest that remained vacant for now 25 years. And I don't know about anybody else in the room, but I think we have to respect the rights of property owners, and property owners need to learn how to respect the communities in which they own property. And blight is just not acceptable. let me just simply say I signed up to declare war on blight. And I take full exception to the dissolution of redevelopment because that's going to be an accelerator on the issue of blight in the urban context, Pat. And so if someone wants to just know a well-kept secret about why the affordability gap is what it is in terms of housing and why LA County has 500,000 shortage in terms of affordable housing, it is in part because there's no mandate with development in the redevelopment space to build that affordable housing. And references to homeless, we know there's the affordability gap that drives it. Not simply mental health addictions and the like, mental health disorders, substance abuse addictions, domestic violence, all those factors. But income inequality and the lack of affordability are significant drivers. And so I just completed the final count last night. We had 8,000 people in the county of Los Angeles, volunteers, counting, and that's a big thing. And so we give those volunteers a big shout out. Some of you may be in this very room. There is an anticipated uptick in homelessness, and it's economically driven. And so we have a lot to come to grips with, and some of us refuse to give up. I want to thank all of you who were good enough to help with Measure H. Those resources will be accountably expended with respect to the services those individuals who are homeless need and deserve. I'll say to you in conclusion that the talk about the lack of interest, property owners have made it clear that they will make their units available if in fact we guarantee the income stream and we provide the services that those individuals who are homeless need. We've had several hearings and meetings with them. Those meetings have been oversubscribed. And so it is not a lack of compassion, a lack of willingness, it's not a lack of availability of those kind of units. And so let the word go forth that the rapid rehousing program, according to Housing to Health in the County of Los Angeles, is robust. It's $355 million annually for Measure H. We need to put those resources to work and end the homelessness in our county. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you so much, Supervisor, for joining us. I want to get to another question. If there are any more still out there, please raise them up and we'll try to get to them. We have a few more minutes left. This question for Supervisor Hahn, or perhaps Ridley Thomas as well. I understand there is a mobile stroke unit in Los Angeles County. I initially read that as mobile strike as a warring faction over the county. But can you please explain how that mobile stroke van works?
Thank you. Actually, the County of Los Angeles is going to be on two fronts. If you're going to have a stroke, the best place to have it is going to be LA County. We want to do everything we can to prevent it, but two things happened a couple weeks ago. One, the county rolled out a new protocol for all of its EMTs and paramedics that if they respond to a person who has the signs of having a stroke, they now take them to one of the comprehensive stroke centers. Little Company of Mary, Torrance is one of those. They will even bypass the closest hospital to take the person to that hospital because we have the life-saving techniques right there at the hospital to actually remove blood clots from their brain. They walk out of the hospital. We've saved their life and they don't have the debilitating effects of a stroke. The other thing we did, I was very pleased that my colleagues and Mark Ridley Thomas was my co-author on a motion to appropriate about $1.5 million to a mobile stroke unit. This is sort of like a paramedic truck on steroids. It carries on board a smaller CT scanner. So now, again, when you call, and if you're in certain areas where this mobile stroke unit is rolling out and you have the signs of a stroke, this unit will get to you, immediately scan your brain to decide which kind of stroke you're having, either the kind, the massive bleeding, or the kind that it's blocked. And both of those are treated very differently. And on board this mobile stroke unit is a neurologist, an RN, and a paramedic. So again, we have a whole new emphasis on stroke victims here in Los Angeles County. And my own father had a stroke the last part of his life. He spent the last 10 years of his life in a wheelchair. He was paralyzed on his left side. And so these two things combined save your life, but also prevent those debilitating effects of stroke. And I'm sure everybody in this room knows someone who suffered from that, and it's hard on them, it's hard on the family, and it reduces their quality of life for the rest of their days here on Earth.
Hold on to that microphone if you would. The next question is actually more information, if possible, about the social host ordinance that the county is considering.
Okay, thank you. Actually, my colleagues, again, supported my motion, and we have the cities on the Hill. So Palos Verdes, RPV, Rolling Hills Estates all passed a social host ordinance this last year. This says that if you're a parent or an owner of a home and there is a party there where underage drinking takes place, you will be held accountable whether or not you're there or not. And you are subject to a $1,000 fine the first time or community service. And what the Hill was trying to do was prevent these parties that young people engage in, particularly if the parents are not there. You know, how many times have we heard, my parents are gone for the weekend, party at my house? Well, no longer is that going to be okay. Or the parent who says, you know, if they're going to drink anyway, I would just as soon they do it under my roof. Also not good. So the county had 3 little unincorporated areas on the Hill, and their concern was that now the county would be the party central because that ordinance did not apply that. So my colleagues have agreed that we can now, in the county of Los Angeles, on the Hill, this ordinance will also apply, so nobody gets off scot-free on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. You want to add to that? Right, and we also, it was brought to our attention that we will include cannabis as also a illegal, because again, Californians have voted to make it legal recreationally. It is still illegal underage. So the same kind of thing, parents can't be giving that to their children who are underage, and that can't happen in a party as well. So that ordinance covers both, drinking and smoking.
Thank you, everyone. I think we've reached sort of the conclusion of our program. I certainly want to thank all of the elected officials who have joined us. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, State Senator State Senator Ben Allen, State Senator Stephen Bradford, Assemblymember Al Maritsucci, Assemblymember Ottenberg, and County Supervisor Janice Hahn, as well as County Supervisor Mark Bidley Thomas. I also, of course, need to thank one last time our co-sponsors of this event, the South Bay Association of Chambers of Commerce, the South Bay Cities COG, and of course the Metropolitan Water District, who has sponsored our breakfast this morning. Thank you to Charles Gale, who's always been a big supporter of this event. He's the current chair of the SBACC, although unfortunately he's not here today. And of course, just thank the cities and the chamber members for continuing to make this event what it is. It's great to see a full room here in support and to listen to our elected officials. It's so important for us to start the year off this way so that we can continue to work with all of these elected officials at the federal, state, and county level. And chamber members who haven't met any of their city council members, they're probably in the room. Please take a moment to say hello to them as well. I appreciate everything. I know also Assemblymember Gibson really sends his regrets for not being able to be here. I know Chris Wilson is here on his behalf too. But just wanted to thank everyone for showing up this morning. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure if you have a few moments, some of the elected officials will be standing around to answer some of any questions that didn't get to me. So I'd love to get a group photo. That's a great idea.
I did apologize publicly for the milk in the shoes. I didn't know I felt so bad. I literally told them, I'm like, and my daughter for milk.